Hello and welcome to another Captain's Table. My name is Paul Berserker1 Batman Shelley, your humble host and space bartender here at the AstroPub, your space bar at the end of the Twitch, end of the universe. Sit back, relax, enjoy the show. We got a good one for you. This is Captain's Table. This is a Captain's Table podcast. It's one of the oldest podcasts for Star Citizen. And we talk about Star Citizen content, community, lots of stuff. Bring people from all over the community to talk about the game. And today I've got two OGs, two very long-time supporters of both Star Citizen and of members here on the Captain's Table, Griffin and Access. Let's get started with introductions. I'll start with you, Griffin. Who are you? What do you do in Star Citizen, and where can they find you?
Hey everybody, I'm Griffin Gaming RPG. I've been in the Star Citizen community since 2013. I'm also one of the producers of the Soul Citizens. We are a live streaming team that comes on Sundays, Thursdays, and usually Saturdays. But today I felt the need to be here with Paul, so we didn't have a Saturday show. So that's what we do. We share information about the Star Citizen community, try to be as informative as possible, and glad to be here as always, Paul. It's been a while.
Yeah, I'm glad to have you on. I managed to sneak on to the Soul Citizen a couple times, so this year. So
I think you have a challenger too. I want to say that Star Jump Grim is pushing up on your record. I think it's the ties between the two of you are the most who have been on. So you have to hold on, claim your fame, your name there.
Is this a subtle hint that you want me to come back on for one?
Just very subtle, very small.
I know there was one that I was going to be coming up on, but I think that ended up being like right in the middle of my vacation. So I was like, I can't make that one, but you know.
No problem.
And it's twitch.tv/Soul Citizens SOL, right?
That's correct. Yep. SOL. Yep.
And
it doesn't mean the other thing. It means soul. Okay. The sun or soul,
yeah,
but not S out of luck. Okay. Because I've had people say that. We have literally rated somebody to say, oh, the S out of luck citizens. I'm like, oh God. No.
The soul system. Soul, the sun.
I'm sad for you, Griff.
I just say, okay, never mind.
Oh my.
All right. And next we've got Access 0096. Who are you? What do you do in Star Citizen? Where can they find you?
Returning Captain's Table member, Access reporting for duty. I'm at the channel mentioned up here. Hey, it actually works.
Yeah.
Access 0096 on Twitch, on YouTube. Well, on YouTube it's the uppercase. On Twitch it's lowercase.
Does lowercase matter on Twitch?
A096 on Kick. Okay. And I think I just started on Rumble too.
Oh.
It's the same as this with an X at the end. So I'm everywhere now.
Awesome.
Made a bunch of new friends too, just by
streaming recently, right?
Yeah, I've been streaming a lot. My last couple of streams, I've basically been, talking about how this is the dry period, but people need to temper their, their
expectations.
Yeah, expectations a little bit.
I will make.
I'm trying to be negative.
Yeah, I will. I will be negative and tell all of you who are listening and watching this, if you have not gone outside and touched grass in the last year, now is the time to go out and touch grass. It is beautiful outside. I also am very biased though, because apparently everywhere else in the United States, it's so hot, and here in Texas, it's only 80. Like the high is 90. It's nice out. It's like a brisk summer. Like what's going on?
I get a dry heat and I love it outside.
Yeah.
Humid heat, no, leave me alone. I'm staying inside.
But as I've always said, July is the month where a lot of people decide to go out and be social and go out to the beautiful weather outside and go visit family members. That's where I was last week, which is why I was doing this, and go on vacations and such. And so it's typically, and that is not reserved for just your average person. The developers do the same. So it seems like it's always a dry period in July because people are taking vacation. I was watching SCL and they had to change things around because one of the people who was supposed to be there was on vacation. So it's like, yeah, that's why we don't get a lot of information. Yeah, so enjoy your time in the sun for those who are here. The rest of us, we're going to talk about space stuff and nerd stuff because we're like that. For this session, for this Captain's Tables theme, we're talking about non-combat gameplay. How non-combat gameplay is today, how good or bad, the changes that CIG is going to be making or is making, and also things that they could improve upon or things that they should stay away from. Just that in general, because I've heard a lot of people discuss, even with the last Star Citizen, inside Star Citizen, they specifically talked about the blockade mission, the blockade event. They said, oh, so many things in Star Citizen about guns. So we wanted to do something that wasn't focusing on violence. It's like right after you said you have to shoot a cargo ship and then take the stuff from the cargo ship. It's like, and all of the comments were in that video are the same. It's like we were tired of having gameplay that was so focused on violence. So we did another gameplay loop focused on violence.
Yeah. Yeah, they missed that.
But it got me thinking about, like, you know, non-combat gameplay. It's not the first time I've heard people in the Star Citizen community talk about that CIG should focus on stuff that isn't just fighters and guns. So I figured, having a good kind of conversation, let's start off with, what does CIG do now that's good in terms of non-combat stuff, and then we'll kind of go into the more problematic stuff. Axis, I'll start with you since you're the last one to introduce yourself. What are some of the good things that CIG does in terms of non-combat gameplay?
We have two semi-complete-ish paths of things based on professions. We have salvage and we have mining. A lot of people overlook them.
Do you think
mining and salvage?
Do you think they're good right now?
They could be better, but they're way better, I would say, than cargo is.
Okay.
That's my argument. But there's always room for improvement. Remember, these are just the 0.5 versions, not even the 1.0 versions of the professions. Like, what is it with salvage? For me, I already strip off the components out of the ship, load them into my cargo ship, then I scrape, and then I munch. See, I make it a three-prong approach, and any useful cargo I take as well.
Okay, I think it's pretty typical, though. I know a lot of people don't like to go in and pull the components out. I like to do that just for practice. When I see a ship, I'm like, oh, I can sell this for something, and every so often I'll be like, hey, I can sell this for something. I get some more money.
I think they fixed the bug where you can sell the components finally, which adds to the more money you can make, which is good.
Okay. Griffin, same question for you. What are some of the good parts about non-combat? What are the things that CIG does right with non-combat gameplay?
Oh boy. I don't know. It's an interesting thing. I would agree definitely that Star Citizen leans much more toward a combat PvE, PvP kind of dynamic in the way that it is now. And if you don't mind, I'd like to kind of say a little something that leads into this, because we had this conversation, a few of our folks in our community, a few weeks ago, and I made a statement, and some people might disagree, but I feel like we know that we've heard the story about all of the citizens who voted and said that exploration is the biggest thing that they're interested in. And we know there are a lot of people who are interested in all of the other offerings that Star Citizen has said that they want to do, whether it's science exploration, mining, salvaging, trading, whatever the case may be. But there is this emphasis toward what we look at as PvE, PvP combat. And one of the questions I presented to people, or one of the observations I said, is that this might have been more of a business marketing decision more than a game player decision. And I know that can be frustrating because we want to see attention given to all these different things that sound very cool in the game. But I asked, would we have raised $700 million over a 12-year period for a salvage game
Yeah.
or an exploration game or an archaeological game? The business marketing side of me says that the PvE, PvP combat side is the way to bring in revenue. And I think one of the things I worry about is that because it's so heavily toward that, for people who may not know or understand the scope of the game, they may actually feel that that's what Star Citizen is. And so the idea of it moving more toward something where PvE and PvP are an element, but these other elements such as social dynamic, community, economics, trade, all that other stuff, as those start to rise up more and become more important in the game, that there may be people who will feel that the game is shifting or that it's changing. But that's because for many years, its emphasis has been in combat. And I'm not saying combat doesn't have a place. I think it does have a place, even with those other areas of gameplay. But now to get to your question, what do I think they've done well with is, even though people in the combat side may feel that there's a lot of stuff lacking because they're comparing it to Tarkov or whatever else they may be comparing it to, I would say in the combat side, the areas that Axis mentioned, such as mining, we feel like that's probably the most
Non-combat, you mean?
advanced. Non-combat, yeah, non-combat. Thank you. The mining is probably the most advanced that we've seen, and I look at it as that's their testing ground. Salvage has kind of come up behind that. Medicine probably has started to come up behind that. But there's still a lot of other areas that they have not touched on that they've talked to us about that they still need to build out on. And so once you start talking about these more esoteric things like science, archaeology, black market, all these other things, which still we have yet to see in any depth at all, I think that as those start to rise up, we'll start to see that combat will start to balance out maybe a little bit more, and we'll start to see how it all interconnects and it's not just emphasized on combat. To your point, and I'll say this last thing, one of my good buddies pointed out that when they showed us that first video about the distribution center, he's a trader, and he was so excited about this idea that you could be having this going over there and this going on over there. And there's maybe a combat going on this side of the distribution center, but over here, somebody's doing trading. But then he says that no matter what he does when he goes there, and this was the problem I had with Eve, because I wanted to get into trading and mining and all that other stuff, but you couldn't leave the station without combat was going to engage you at some point. Sometimes I just wanted to travel across the system, but I was going to fight my way to go look at the stars. You know what I mean? So I hope that CIG, and I think they will, they'll create those spaces where it's not like a PvP zone per se, but I think they will create spaces that allow for that, always that aspect of risk, but that there could be plenty of times where you go out in your ship and there's no engagement, you know. But right now, one system, it's tight. We're just going to feel it for right
now. Yeah, it's interesting you bring up the marketing thing, because it's been there's a I guess controversial video that was that mentioned me in it, that basically its emphasis was, are people buying Star Citizen because they're watching, you know, Avenger 1 doing PvP bounties, or are they buying Star Citizen to watch Paul do smuggling? And he's like, no one's buying Star Citizen to see Paul do smuggling. They're doing it because they're watching Avenger 1 doing PvP stuff. And it's from the perspective of PvPer. And I think you putting up a good point of, like, I think there's a lot of folks who are so keyed into Star Citizen being a PvP, PvE combat game that they forget that there are other aspects of the game, or they don't realize there's other aspects of the game. And so they see anything that is not PvP, PvE combat oriented as a threat to their gameplay loop, that they're not paying attention because it's not quite done yet. And they're like, why are they paying attention to X when they should be focusing on this? Oh gosh, what was I going to say? Oh, and yeah, but I think there is a bit of a marketing problem for that one. And I think with 3.24 going forward, CIG probably has to kind of start leaning more into the not so sexy, you know, less, you know, boom, 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 like trailer music with people running and people gunning, like, you know, the Call of Duty effect, you know, gameplay sort of trailers. And because it's one of those things that I got to point out, but Farming Sim is one of the most popular games on the planet. and people lost their mind because you could grow rice in the latest update. Like that was a frontline news, sort of gaming news, that farming sim allowed you to grow rice. And
That's funny.
and so it's like, yes, do combat and all that stuff. It's sexy. Is it going to get a lot of attention? Yeah. But they're the people like doing stuff that seems menial, like, Euro Truck Simulator and your American Truck Simulator are very popular, very successful. Yep. You said like Salvage is a great example. Is there's what was that game? Hard Space Shipbreaker, another very popular game made by the people who did Homeworld.
Yeah.
And that's a standalone game that did this. So like there's definitely a market for it. I think CIG just needs to learn to ease off the drum and bass and start adding a little bit more of whimsical flute in their marketing.
Another thing you're missing, and literally just keyed in on it, is construction. Because with the upcoming base building, I'm not saying anytime soon, understand, probably within 18 months at the minimum, we could be talking about another profession being added. And y'all know Tomato, Space Tomato.
Yeah.
He wants to go out there and open up an org, do some things like building stuff for people and stuff. I'm pretty sure there are other people that want to build stuff as well, like be construction magnates and stuff. And it makes sense, that's non-combat. Oops, it looks like it's my camera is doing something funny.
You look good.
But yeah, we have but with that in mind, we have that being worked on. We also have, somebody mentioned it, hacking, but that's technically espionage, so
yeah,
gray area. What else am I forgetting, Griffin? There's a couple of other things in the background.
Let's go to the we said what we're doing right, but like, and we kind of, Griffin, you sort of touched on this as well about like what they were doing wrong. Is there anything specifically that you can point out to, like, that beyond what you've discussed about like what CIG is kind of falling down on when it comes to non-combat gameplay?
Yeah. Again, I don't think that they're doing anything wrong. I think that there are parts of me that make me feel like time is what's making things feel rough. The careers, for example, sometimes CIG will introduce, well, here's something I think that God, it's so weird. They'll introduce something and tell us about it. And I want to say, in the sense of, this is what how could I say this? We did a topic one time called Visions, Dreams, and Reality.
I was on that show.
Remember, right?
Yeah.
Okay, so we talked about Chris's vision, right? Chris's vision. And that got us all licking our chops, right? And then there's this period of time between reality where we start to dream. And every one of us brings our dreams to what we want Star Citizen to be. Those dreams could be affected from whether you watch Star Trek, Star Wars, Starship Troopers, The Expanse, whatever. And we start making up our own version of what Star Citizen is going to be, right? And then the reality comes. And the question will be, is that reality closer to Chris's reality, or maybe the reality that we want the game to be? When you ask what are the things that they could do better, they may introduce something. Like, okay, here's an example. Remember when they did that show and they made the little campsite with the bed and all that other stuff and whatnot? It got people kind of pumped up, like, oh, that's going to be cool, blah, 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 blah. How long ago was that? When we saw the little med bag with the medicines in it and stuff, the little case and everything, when we saw that for medical people, when have we seen that? There's these things that they'll introduce and show us. And I get it. Some of it is to let us know this is the direction we're going. But then there's also that feeling of us wanting to get it in our hands. The recent RSI beacon marker that they gave us, the little light thing, right? But we got the vehicle, but what do we do with it? It's like, and maybe if there's some explanation that comes along or talks about it or says, hey, we haven't forgotten about it, that would make us feel good, or it's still in development, or it's going to come out after this. But they show us something, get us to lick our chops, and then it just falls by the wayside. But then later on, we get to hear about ship balancing and weapons, and here's a new gun, and here's a new pistol. And, it's like, well, what happened to that other stuff you guys talked about? I think that that's the feeling for the non-combatant player that, we'd like to get those great updates too. We'd also like to get those items that make what little we have feel like it's moving forward and not just still in the vision mode.
Okay. Yeah, that's a good way of putting it. It's not necessarily like a dev thing that they're doing wrong. It's more of like communication and making sure that the people who aren't first person shooters who aren't Starkov players or DCS and space players who are getting like feel like our gameplay is being worked on or being at least updated on. More like the communication.
Can I give you a quick example?
Sure.
What's the restaurant, the fine dining restaurant down at Microtech?
I can't remember the name of that thing.
What's it called, guys?
Not Wally's.
No. It says fine cuisine. Jesus, I can't
remember the name of it either.
What's the name of that joint, guys? Come on, you guys in chat.
It's Smile High Club related.
No.
There's a different one.
It's got the hardwood in the front and the glass entry and all that stuff. Right. Okay. So you run past that place for 3 years, right? And you finally go out to the landing platforms to do Siege of Orison, and it's open. It's a really nice restaurant, right? But it's open so that you can go do combat in it.
Yeah.
It's like Oza. Thank you,
Oza,
20. Yeah. Oza. Yeah. It finally opens up, and it's only so that you can go in there and shoot people. It's like, you could open that freaking restaurant up. You know what I mean? It's just little things like that still end up being combat is still the reason why we saw it, not because it's a restaurant that you could go in, not Leroy's.
Yeah.
I think so.
Yeah. It's called specifically. I looked it up. It's called Oza Neo Imperial Cuisine.
Yes.
And the other thing, which is to add to this, which is I realized there's another one that's called Thaw, which is a luxury spa that's closed. And I along with that whole thing, it's like I can't wait to see Thaw come out in some sort of combat gameplay edition for we're going to see a spa that's going to be used for me to kill Ninetales again.
When you get shot, you have to go there to heal up and feel better. That's why you have to have that.
They're going to replace some of those gyms in Siege of Orison for a Thaw, so you can get to the med bed there, so you can heal up.
Exactly. Well, what's the company that we do our characterization for? What's it called?
Bioticorp.
Bioticorp. There's a facility in there. I mean, why can't we have a place there that's where we go? I mean, non-combat, but it's a part of the gameplay that we already have. Let's just bring it into game beyond just the opening screen. Modifications, things like that. The clothing store in Microtech that I like going to, the really nice clothing store,
Apparelli,
still has no kiosk. After all these years, it's the one store that you cannot buy things from a kiosk. It's like you guys are leaving out. You introduce these things, bits and pieces of them, but just give us a little bit that we can do with them.
Okay.
Access.
I got something to add to that, Griffin. You're going to love this. My gripe is when they do a trade or a path, for advancement in a trade, huge holes in the ships or vehicles that are non-existent. Y'all know where I'm going. Okay. We have the Vulture and the Reclaimer for salvage. You either have freaking huge and can't land in most places, and you need a lot of crew and probably cover support, again, combat to protect your ship. Or we have the Vulture, which is very weak. Technically two-man ship, but you still need a cargo ship, and it has pitiful buffer. My argument is when you start getting to the point when these ships were concepts, right? Salvage was a pipe dream. It wasn't out. There was no need for a medium or a large between the capital and the small. Now there is a need because some people just want to roll with 2 or 3 people. They don't want to roll with dozens of ships, right?
Yeah.
I mean, a medium salvage ship, I've been saying it for a long time.
I mean, that was what I was going to say. So, like, the thing that I think that CIG is really falling down on is because at the end of the day, Star Citizen is a ship game. It's a game about with ships. It's your main ships are the main like vehicle upon which gameplay is going to work. And because of that, all you have to do is take a look at the ship list, and there are 2 mining vessels released, a total of 4 that are been discussed. With the Arastra and the Orion.
Spectre, Mole, Arastra,
Orion. That's it. 4. And there are only 2 salvage vehicles, which are both out, the Vulture and the Reclaimer. Nothing else as far as I know. Medical has a little bit more variety, but it's the Nursa, the Pisces, medical, the Cutlass Red, the Apollo, and the Hope. And that's it.
Right.
There's only 5 dedicated medical ships, 4 dedicated mining ships, 2 salvage ships.
Yep.
But out of they said it's like 150, 160 ships, probably close to 200 when it comes to all of the ships that are in like concept. No, probably more like 170 because there's not a lot of ships in concept. I guess the Rock and the Rock DS, as people point out, for mining. So it's 3, technically 4 mining vehicles.
Ghost brings up the Galaxy and Pioneer for construction. We also need to bring up whatever that thing is in the concept art for Tiny, the small thing, the little Scout.
Oh, yeah.
And the Atlas platform variant.
Yeah, the MCV.
No name.
Well, it's everyone's calling it the MCV, but it's because of the leak in the files and stuff. But yeah, no, but the problem is that like at most there's like 20 ships that are specifically dedicated to non-combat. There are some other ships which are hauling ships, but it's like the whole series and the Caterpillar and the Hercules. There's like maybe 10 dedicated haulers. The rest of them are hybrid ships, or have variants that are combat oriented. Like there's the Cutlass Black, the Cutlass Blue, all of the Freelancer variants, including the Cutlass Miss, the Freelancer Miss, all the Freelancer variants, plus the Freelancer Miss, which is itself a combat variant. So if you just look at the ships, which is what CIG's main kind of revenue comes from, and it is also the main thing that they really like use to promote the game and try to like promote gameplay. The vast majority are combat or combat adjacent. Only maybe 30 of those ships are non-combat. I mean, like, how many light fighters do you need? There's like 6. There are more light fighters in the game than there are salvage or mining vehicles.
Yeah.
Light fighters have insane representation. Like, there are more medium fighters, I think, now than there are mining vehicles. It's like the just the category of fighter is so big in Star Citizen. I know some of that is because of Squadron 42 and other reasons. Yeah. But at a certain point, CIG, I think CIG needs to start to kind of go, okay, well, maybe we should start making vehicles for the gameplay that's not just shooting people. I think that would be the thing I think CIG is probably falling down the most on, but that comes along with your idea, Griffin. But I think it's a lot of it is just there's no visibility of the progress that's being made on the side that's not just shoot somebody else. So and as goes,
and there's a part of me that also makes me feel, and please, combat people, do not be offended when I say this.
Yeah,
making the combat part is easy. Determining what space means, or what science means in this game, or what touring means in this game, or I mean, those are things that we're venturing into other areas that you don't see really pushed in other areas of gaming. And what I mean by easy, I'm saying it's been done. And so, as far as being able to provide that instant game activity that people are familiar with and can step into and understand, for Star Citizen to build out on that, I get it. I wish that other aspects of gaming were just as prevalent, but they're not in a lot of games today. And so Again, could you have raised $700 million saying I'm making a mining game? I don't know. Maybe, but I don't know. I think that they had to go that route, and that becomes the means, and we all can participate. I, I hate to say it, there's little propaganda out there as far as I'm concerned that space is dangerous. Space is dangerous because of y'all, not because, I mean, space is dangerous for other reasons like radiation and
Yeah.
temperatures. We never talk about space being dangerous from that aspect. It's always from the human side, right?
Mhm.
And you can ride on that and make money off of that, right? Until we went to Pyro and people got hit by that burst off of Pyro Star. Then people saw danger come from another area, right?
Mhm.
Once you start introducing radiation and having to use that, what's it called? What's that pin called that we have now that nobody thought about?
Yeah, the decon pin, I
The
think.
decon
Oh,
pin
Yeah.
that introduces another level of gameplay. So now instead of the red pin being about bleeding because I got shot, the red pin is now about because like radiation got to me. I mean,
Mhm.
they've got to start introducing that other stuff to start balancing the game out more.
Yeah, I agree.
Oh, sorry.
Okay. Now that we've kind of thoroughly talked about some of the problems, and we kind of just brought in some of the solutions. What are some of the things you'd like to see going forward in terms of how CIG might be able to start maybe encouraging or improving the experience of non-combat gameplay? Like what is something that you think that would be, I say simple, nothing in life is simple, but like something that they could do in say the next year to make people who are who participate in non-combat gameplay feel like they're being paid attention to. Access, I'll start with that.
Well, for mining, remember we only have a select number of minerals at the moment. For hand mining, we have like 3. Headnite, no 4.
4. It's a new one, yeah. Yeah.
We have 4. We have the golden mystery element, Jalanite. We have Dolomite, Headnite, and I forget the 4th. Maybe chat knows. It's the purple one, purple blue one, purple blue hand mineable. What is it?
Yeah, I know what you're talking about. There's
Aphorite. There it is.
Yeah.
Aphorite.
Yeah.
That's it. Thanks, guys. But yeah, there's only 4 hand minables for people just starting out, seeing a starter ship. Don't want to dive into spending $150 for a prospector or
Yeah.
They just want to get out there, get a hand tool, carve up some headnite or whatever, and leave. It would be nice to add some more variety to the ore deposits.
Okay.
And then when the bigger ships, this is just for mining in particular, add more to the mineral pool because you're going to have to, because it relates to another career, which is when you make stuff, crafting and stuff, you're going to have to add materials to craft things. An iron frame, or what's an item we don't have right now? Silver. Silver we don't have on the table. Uranium we don't have. I'm talking about things that are actually practically used.
Yeah. Apparently silicon is in, but I haven't seen.
Silicon is really.
I haven't seen it, so
that would be
I would
used
trust
for,
them.
Computer chips or something.
Yeah.
Uranium, obviously, for simple power sources. You see what I'm saying?
Yeah.
A lot of these non-combats kind of intermesh.
Mm-hmm.
That's my concern, Griff, is that they're going to let the web get too weighted down by clutter and not get it netted together at the right time.
Okay. So what you're saying is things like the economy connects with the commodities, and those commodities are connected to mining because you get a lot of those commodities from mining, which is connected to refining, which is you need to refine those materials so you can build things, so you can use those buildings. And then whenever you are getting RMC or construction materials from breaking down a ship, those construction materials in RMC will eventually be based off of how much what the composite of the materials of the ship that you broke down was in the first place. So it's like all of this stuff is connected because of this web of economic activity, which doesn't have anything to do with combat, and it all has to do with like the like building on top of each other. Okay.
Someone did mention it, that the weapon ISC hinted crafting might be being modeled in the background. And I agree. You saw the handgun that looked
Mhm.
like a mini machine. This, well,
Yeah.
it's made with components from bits and bobs and pieces. So, where did that come from?
Yeah.
Did you buy it somewhere? Obviously not. You scrap hardwired and built shit. Pardon my language. But trying to, tone it a little bit. But
Mhm.
you have to be able to have parts to build something like that. And they also mentioned it about the voltage weapon
Yeah. The
that
Volt
you can
weapon.
upgrade and stuff. That's another thing. Upgrading that's not weapon related. It is weapon related, but it's non-combat. Being a weapon merchant, you
Mhm.
upgrade things,
For other
sell
people.
it in a shop, and then make a profit.
Yeah.
And that is the start of a civilian economy. Sorry, I'm getting off on a tangent.
Yeah. You're not really. What you're saying is like improve the number of minables, like drastically expand the mineable, like what you can acquire through minables
Minables and harvestables
and
too. Yeah,
harvestables, and then also add weapon crafting. You're saying like those two things would go a long way to improving like that sort of experience for non-combat.
right. Gear crafting, weapon crafting, all that's going to be interrelated, and it's going to happen so fast.
Okay.
We've already seen the pockets on the armor of the dusters.
Yeah.
That shows they're starting to think about the slots things
Mhm.
that were mentioned years ago, Griffin. Remember that? The
Hmm.
slot discussions?
Yep.
And again, I'm going to stop talking now because I've
You're
talked
good. Griff, your thoughts on like what CIG could do in the short term to improve that sort of the feel of non-combat.
Yeah. And yeah, I don't know if this is short term. God, I wish I could say it.
No.
In the short term, I would love for them to start activating things that have been placeholders for a while.
Yeah.
For example, many of us were drawn in by the original Constellation video with the Aquila, coming in, and it's got the scanning array at the top and the turret up there. But there's no scanning station. There's nothing for someone to do. Just something as simple as that. Some ships, for example, have areas for storing food products and items like that. There would be people who would dig going in and setting up their ship and getting it ready to be lived in so that when their friends come on, they could do stuff. That's combatant and non-combatant.
Mhm.
They started implementing it, and the Pisces has it, the Redeemer has it, your favorite ship, of course.
Yes.
But they haven't. I've got a nice 600i with a bar and everything, and can't use it.
Mhm.
There are these just little areas within what they have given us that I wish they would activate. I wish closets worked, for example. On my 300i, when I go on it, I actually do open the closet and I put my clothes and flight suits in there. And to your point, you mentioned this earlier, Paul, about building the discipline of doing these things now so that when the game does come into its fruition, we've gotten used to it. It doesn't shock us about doing inventory and using drawers and all these
Mhm.
spaces. So there are elements that the ship is there, and these things that we've looked at for years as placeholders that I wish they would start to activate a little bit more. They've done it with engineering a little bit. They've started to move us in that direction, but I still have a lot of questions about engineering. And I think they mentioned it on one of the shows recently that the larger ships will be the ones that really have to worry about all the connections and lines and all the other stuff. But I do want to know about, what does it mean? Can I replace my components on my C2? Does my C2 need to go to Crusader shipyards? Does it need to go to a Cousin Crow's in order to swap out that quantum drive? I can see swapping it out on a size 1 or a size 2, but when I get to a size 3, there's a lot of information that's outside of combat, which is general operations in the game, that I wish we had a little bit more clarity on. But for the non-combatant areas like medical, I would love to see something step up for that, because there are a lot of people out there that would love to do that. I know that they seem like they started moving toward it with the NERSA. This idea of how that, because people went crazy about the whole multiple respawning thing, but I still
Mhm.
think there are going to be, and they've said it, tied into Death of a Spaceman. There are going to be limitations and restrictions to that make us have to decide: is it best for me to respawn, or is it best for me for someone to try and get me and deliver me back to the hospital? That's not there yet, but we know it's coming.
Mhm.
And so I think that things like that. The thing that concerns me a little bit for both non-combatant players or combatant players now, and maybe I'm wrong, is this issue about people talking about the time sink.
Mhm.
And Star Citizen has always been in some way about a time sink. And there's a group of people who don't realize that CIG will adjust times. For those of us who were around back in the day when we first got Hurston,
Mhm.
it used to be a 15-minute ride from Port Olisar. When we first got trams used to be 5 minutes real time, like
Yeah.
real time.
You'd have to wait for them. It was so insane.
Yeah, Pyro was 14 AU. It's now 9.5. They'll adjust those things to make sure that realism pulls back to what's playable and fun.
Mhm.
And even time. I still hear people say stuff like, "What will you do for 20 minutes riding on your ship?" In my head, I've got a million things in my head. There are players who they're so wanting to get into the thing
Mhm.
that they don't know that there are other things that are non-combatant related that CIG is going to want you to do, whether it's cleaning your weapons, whether it's tuning your ship, whether it's planning for what you're going to do. I've been on
Mhm.
ships for 10, 15 minutes or 10 minutes roughly, and time flies by like that, and we're coming out of quantum. So anyway, there's just things that I think that they could implement with what they have already that will make non-combatant gameplay kind of liven up a little bit for us.
Okay. Yeah, I think the simplest answer I could make is the stuff that's coming that they plan to come in 4.0 will go a long way.
Yes.
Because for those of you who don't know what the 4.0 roadmap is, it's I always say don't necessarily trust the roadmap, but every time I say that, Jake pops out of the corner somewhere and goes, "We've only missed 6 targets since I've been doing this. Goodbye." And it wasn't like they missed 6 targets that wandered off the roadmap. It was 6 targets that got pushed to the next one.
Right.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, no matter what metric you use, it's gotten incredibly better. Like everything's gotten incredibly better since Jake has taken over the roadmap station. So thank you, Jake. As Jake, of course, is we all know Jake. I think Jake's been on Soul Citizens multiple times too, right?
Oh yeah. Yep.
Been a community member long before they became a community manager, and they have that frustration. They understood that frustration. But still, like if you look at that list, it's about half of that list is pyro related and jump point related, and the other half is all just engineering and life support. It's all like so. Like it's engineering and life support, and then pyro, jump points, and server meshing. Those are the things that we're getting in. And once they start adding in things like having to manage your atmosphere, decompressing and recompressing ships, dealing with repairs,
fire suppression, all that stuff is coming in. Yeah,
it's going to start making. It's going to start making a lot of more of that non-combat stuff, like. I think even combat people will start realizing it's like, yeah, I need a non-combat person on my like larger ships just because I need someone to repair my ship so I don't explode in the middle of combat. Or, I needed someone to look over my stuff because I don't want to have to like check my engine every single time to see what its status is. And it adds some time, like it adds some like, oh yeah, time sync, as you were saying, but those time syncs are designed for other players or NPCs to fill in those times. Like, oh, this is the time for that person to go tune the engine or to build finish tuning up a weapon so that they can get it to the person. Or my distant hopium dreams of, the person who's your chef who's cooking up a nice meal so that you don't lose stamina as fast when you go out on your mission, stuff like that.
Right. And it doesn't mean that the non-combatant isn't with you. Because sometimes I think we say non-combatant, we think that they have nothing to do with combat. You could have the non-combatant who's in your Ursa, or the little Pisces, right? Who is maybe not great in FPS. That's not what they're into, right? Or the Cuddy Red, but they're the persons that will drop you down outside the location and go up into orbit and wait for you until you say, "Griff, we need you down in 5 minutes." You know what I mean? That's what they do. or that engineer, like you said, who's working on your ship after a battle. When you guys have gone to the hospital, that person's on the ship getting it ready so you can go back out, right?
Yeah.
Or if it's just a cargo run, I mean, there's so many things that non-combatants can still be a part of in a PvE, PvP space, right? But they don't necessarily have to be those in the forefront of what we would consider FPS or direct combat with other people.
It's I've called Star Citizen a logistics game for forever because of that.
Yeah.
It's like if you can go out there and be the Top Gun ace pilot, but there's plenty of people out there who will be there to patch your ship up after you get banged up or replace your parts. And as I always like to say, as I quoted this in my last lore video, that a lot of people say I misquoted it, but it's just one of those quotes that come, like, there's so many versions of it, it floats around. But there's a famous quote from General Omar Bradley who said, amateurs talk tactics, professionals talk logistics. And that's kind of the way of putting things. It's like, in theory, all non-combat like professions are combat professions. They're just support professions. So, So for those of you who are angry, who are PvPers or PvEers who are in my comments being mad about us talking about this, just think about this. We're talking about the stuff that's the people who want to be hanging out with you. That you want to hang out with your friend, but they're not so good at Tarkov, but they really enjoy a spreadsheet. So get them. But all right.
Let me say something too. I'm reading something that New Ledge Lambo says. When do these dreams of gameplay and big mechanics start getting realized? Some of these core elements have been talked about for years, and that's exactly why we're having this conversation now. Because even though there are many people who are combatants who feel like CIG has not delivered in their area in years, believe me, the non-combatants have gotten much less.
Yes.
They've gotten much less, and they've waited even longer. I know people who've been wanting to get into their endeavor and be able to grow items, or people who want to do farming. There's none of that in the game. And the combatants have gotten most of the attention. I'm sorry, guys, I'm one of the combatants too, but let's face it, the energy has gone into that area. But people who've stepped into this game for other areas have gotten absolutely nothing in some areas, and they've waited. So believe you me, those visions and dreams you're talking about are just as important to them. And that's why we're having this show today, to raise the element of saying there's other aspects of this game that we would like to see.
And hopefully CIG starts addressing those as to what's going on with them, and to help, maybe CIG see, start a discussion in the community about CIG starting to see that non-combat isn't a threat to their bottom line or many of the other things that whatever issues that might be happening about how many people are looking for this, these are all great ideas, and knowledge is right. We don't know when these are coming out. These things have been talked about for years. So starting with having some of those things take priority would be nice. So
I tell you this much, Paul, we'll see the Javelin, the Idris, the Perseus, the Polaris before we'll see the Endeavor.
100%. We know that's the case. We know that's the case.
All combatant caps. We'll see all of those ships before we see the non-combatant final ship come out.
I mean, we might even see some of those before the Orion shows up.
Yeah.
Because the Orion is for a gameplay loop that exists in game right now.
Yep. Yep. That's true.
So. Well, I think that's going to enter our main discussion point. We're going to move into questions and answers, but I'm going to be doing an experiment. For the first time in about a year, I'm going to take this segment and I'm going to clip it out and I'm going to put it up as its standalone video away from the VOD and see how it does. Because I've been just leaving the VOD up and seeing how it does in the past. And it's been doing okay, but I want to try to experiment a little bit more with more, actual video uploads. So for those of you who are watching that segment, I'll leave a link above Griff's head to the full VOD so you can watch the question and answers. But I found that people find it a little bit more palatable to do a 45-minute video is a lot more palatable than a 2 hour and 45-minute video. So make sure you check that out up there, and for that, and let me know in the comments below any of the topics we've talked about here. How do you think CIG has done non-combat? How do you think they can improve? What are some things you'd hope to see? Of course, make sure you check out Griffin at Soul Citizens on Twitch and YouTube, Axis0096 on Twitch and YouTube. And we mentioned Jake earlier. Jake is also a streamer. Jake is streaming, actually right now, they stream Kingdom Hearts on Saturdays. So they do a lot of stuff like this. So go check them out as well. And he's like, yeah, he's live right now. So for everybody else, we're going to take a 5-minute break and we'll be right back. And for those of you who are watching us in the recording, make sure to check us out at twitch.tv/TheAstroPub, youtube.com/TheAstroPubLive on Saturdays at 4 p.m. Eastern, and it's like noon. Yeah, no, 1 p.m. Eastern. I'm trying to do the time zones in my head. It's kind of a newer time. So
yeah.
Thank you for watching. And like I say every time, hope to see you someday in the black.